Hello, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest questions most of us will ever face. How do you figure out what a house is actually worth? Let's dive in.
So, what is a house really worth? It's not just some number that gets pulled out of thin air. The final price you see on a listing is this really fascinating mix of hard data, what the neighbor's houses sold for, and honestly, just the overall vibe of the market. It's part science and it's definitely part art.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to use what I like to call the zoom out method. We're going to start super focused on just one single property, get to know it inside and out, and then we'll start looking at the bigger picture.
Okay, so let's meet the star of our show today. It's a single-family home located at 303 Oak Street in Westwood, Massachusetts. This is the house we're going to break down from top to bottom. Every valuation has to start with the basics, right? The simple, objective facts. So we've got a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath raised ranch. That's a style of house where you walk in and the main living space is up a short flight of stairs. It's got 1,150 square feet of living space, and it's sitting on a pretty big lot, almost a full acre. These are our foundational numbers, our starting point.
But of course, a house is so much more than just its stats on paper. The really crucial part of figuring out its value is understanding what makes it special. And 303 Oak Street, it has some serious perks. We're talking an in-ground pool with a cabana, a huge fenced-in yard, and there's even potential to expand later on. These are the kinds of features that tell a much more valuable story to a buyer.
A house doesn't exist in a vacuum. Its value is massively influenced by what's going on right next door and down the street. So for our next step, we have to zoom out just a little and size up the neighbors.
And the way we do that is with something called comparable properties, or what everyone in the business just calls comps. These are homes that have sold recently that are as similar as possible to our house. Think of them as the market's memory. They tell us exactly what people have been willing to pay for a house just like this one, in this exact area, very recently.
All right, let's look at the raw data. Up top, that's our house, 303 Oak Street, and it's already pending, meaning an offer's been accepted for $900,000. But look at the other recent sales. Some are bigger inside, but they have smaller lots. And check out 1154 High Street down at the bottom. It sold for way less, $760,000, even though it has a slightly bigger lot. So what on earth is going on here?
Let's just put those two side by side. Both houses have lots that are pretty much 1 acre. But there is a $140,000 difference in what they sold for. How is that possible? How can two homes with basically the same amount of land be valued so differently? Well, the answer isn't just about the house. It's about a much more powerful way of looking at the numbers.
And that brings us to this key metric, price per square foot. People call it the great equalizer for a reason. It lets us compare totally different sized properties on an apples-to-apples basis. And look at this. Our house, 303 Oak, is commanding an absolutely massive $783 per square foot. The others? They're way down in the 500s and 600s. That huge premium is the market screaming that buyers are willing to pay way, way more for those special features we talked about, that amazing pool and that incredible backyard.
Okay, so we've analyzed the house itself, and we've checked out its immediate neighbors. Now it's time for our final, biggest zoom out. We've got to read the mood of the entire Westwood market.
I'm just going to put a number up on the screen. 4.92. What in the world could that mean?
Seriously, what does a number like 4.92 mean for someone who's trying to sell their home? Well, this one single figure is one of the most powerful indicators we have for who's in the driver's seat, the buyer or the seller.
That number is what we call months of inventory. It's basically a measure of supply and demand. If no new houses were listed for sale, it would take just 4.92 months to sell every single home that's currently on the market. And here's the magic number you need to know: 6 months. Anything below 6 months is officially what's called a seller's market.
So the verdict is in. With an inventory of just under 5 months, Westwood is firmly, without a doubt, a seller's market. What that means is simple. There are more people looking for homes than there are homes available to buy, and that gives sellers a huge advantage.
You can see that advantage in how quickly homes are selling, or what we call days on market. The average house in this town might sit for 42 to 79 days. But, and this is so important, a home that's priced competitively can be gone in as little as 26 days. Pricing isn't just about getting the most money. It's also a strategy for how fast you want to move. So, let's bring this all home. We've looked at the property itself, we've looked at the comps in the neighborhood, and we've taken the temperature of the overall market. Now comes the final step, the art of setting the price. And really, this is the simple three-step logic we just walked through. First, you figure out what makes your property unique, like that pool. Second, you compare it to what actual buyers have paid for similar houses nearby. And third, you adjust your whole strategy based on how hot or cold the market is right now.
And that brings us to maybe the most important takeaway of all. The right price isn't just a number you calculate. It's a strategy. It's a conscious choice you make based on what you want to achieve.
For a house like 303 Oak Street, that means you have two clear paths you could take. You could go with a competitive price, say between $915,000 and $935,000. The goal there? Get a ton of attention, maybe even a bidding war, and sell it fast. Or you could reach for the highest feasible price, maybe push it up to $950,000, and you wait. You wait for that one perfect buyer who falls in love with that yard and that pool and is willing to pay top dollar for it.
Which leaves us with one last question to think about. In a hot seller's market, when supply is low and demand is through the roof, is any price too high? That's the strategic tightrope that every single seller has to walk. Thanks for tuning in.